Hey everyone, Josh Taylor here for 6 months later. I've just started the review period for the Nothing Phone 2. I've now spent more than 6 days with this phone, using it every day, so I've got a few impressions about it. More importantly, I've received your questions, and I'm going to answer them right here in this video. Our first question here comes from YouTube, and it asks, will the backlight improve battery life, camera performance, phone performance? Will it improve charging time or screen quality? Or is it just a gimmick that becomes useless once you put a non-transparent case on it? So this gets to one of the main discussions about the Nothing Phone 1, as well as now this next generation, which is the Nothing Phone 2, which is what's called the Glyph Interface here on the back. Seems to be a pretty controversial feature for a lot of people because they think it's very gimmicky. And yeah, if you do put a case on this that blocks all of the Glyph lights here, obviously then it's not going to be useful to you. Nothing has partnered with somebody to manufacture see-through phone case, which actually is very good for a see-through phone case. Like, it's a see-through phone case, but man, like with Google's cases, I've seen them bungle their own cases. Nothing has not done that with this. The only thing I wish that it didn't do was just pick up so many damn fingerprints on the back, because then it makes the back here just look like it has all these fingerprints over the cool design. When you don't use a case, you will still pick up some fingerprints there, especially if your fingers are really greasy, but I don't notice the fingerprints as much when I'm not using the case as I do when I'm using the case. So just keep that in mind. One thing I really like about the Glyph interface is actually the essential notifications. So what happens is this Glyph light here in the top right corner, you can set specific notifications within Nothing's OS to light up the essential notification. And this phone is really made when you're not using it to sit flat on a surface. I will say it is nice to have that Glyph kind of pop up when I know that, oh, somebody messaged me that's important, or someone, you know, I want to be able to respond to right away, versus notifications that I'm like, whatever, I don't need to be notified about this. I'll get to it later. I'll give you a better sense at the 6-month mark whether or not that Glyph interface is really a gimmick or quite useful. So far, I'm a bit mixed on it, right? You have certain things like, you know, if you turn up the volume, right, you can have the Glyph kind of show that. That's kind of nice, but most of the time when you're turning up the volume, you're looking at the phone itself. Don't know how useful that actually is. There's a timer on here. The timer is actually kind of cool. The essential Glyph interface, though, I think is probably the most useful Glyph so far. I do also wish there was a little bit more customization you could do, because say like the one that's reserved for, I don't know where it is, it's like Uber or something. Like, I wish I could just like have like a temporary, like not an essential Glyph that stays lit all the time, but one from like a Discord server that I'm following that I'm like, I kind of want to know when there's activity, but I don't need to constantly keep up with it per se. I wish there was like a little bit more customization that you could do to kind of fade in a Glyph, keep it on there for like, I don't know, 5 minutes and then fade out because it's not really that important. I don't know, something like that could be interesting. The Glyph interface is not really going to do anything to improve battery life, camera performance, phone performance, charging time, or screen quality. Now, that's if I'm understanding the question correctly, and you're talking about the backlight Glyph interface and not the backlight of the screen itself, which is an OLED display panel. The screen on the Nothing Phone 2 is actually really, really nice. It's an LTPO display. It's a 6.7-inch display, OLED, and it just looks beautiful. It is a premium quality screen at a phone that starts at $599 US. That's the version that I have here, and I would be very happy using this screen as my day-to-day daily driver phone. I have no complaints so far about the phone's screen. Back to the Glyph interface. A couple other things that are really interesting with it. You have this feature called Flip to Glyph, where when you put the phone down, it kind of lights up the Glyph, and just to give you a subtle like notification like, hey, I'm on it. If anything important happens, I will light up. I personally really like that just subtle touch. Nothing as a phone company, by the way, just is really obsessed with details. When you open a Nothing Phone 2, You just notice so many details. Even the SIM card tray has like their own branding in it. The other thing I really like about this phone is this back design. This phone looks really stunning when you look at it online and see it in reviews, but it is another thing when you actually look at it in person. You just see the depth of the different components that make up this translucent back design. It looks like nothing else. And that's something I've kind of struggled with as I've thought about this phone, is like, how much do smartphone aesthetics really matter? Because some people are just going to look at the back and they're going to look at the lights and like, that's a gimmick, you know, whatever. When you're a new phone company like Nothing is, again, this is only their second generation of phone, you have to do something that differentiates the phone, that makes it stand out, so that when people see it in the wild, they go, whoa, what the hell is that? And they have done that with this phone. I think this is one of the nicest looking phones I've seen in years. All right, next question, and this one is on Netflix. I want to know how bad it is on Nothing to stream it, because Max Weinbach said Netflix isn't getting any HDR certification. So I've looked at the Netflix settings on the Nothing Phone 2, and I don't actually even see 4K as an option. I know I have 4K set as an option on the Netflix account that I use. This is not, by the way, a problem specific to Nothing phones. When I looked up this issue, the Xperia 1 seems to have this, as well as other Android phone manufacturers. This just stems from Netflix on what phones they certify for HDR and 4K. What are the UI improvements and responsiveness, especially in comparison to stock Android? It's too early to tell like exactly where this camera system racks up, but in my limited experience, I'd say the choices the algorithm and HDR processing do are a little bit inconsistent. We'll wait and see. I want to take a lot more photos with this phone and compare it to the other phones I have with all of the big smartphone manufacturers. Overall first impressions though, I think they color tune this closer to an iPhone than the Pixel. Pixels typically skew a bit cooler in their tones. iPhones skew a bit warmer. This phone system skews a bit warmer. Now, obviously, aside from the really awesome aesthetics of the back, the Glyph interface, the other real big differentiator with the Nothing phone versus stock Android, the Pixel, Samsung, is Nothing OS. Nothing OS, though, is very similar to the Pixel OS that you see on Pixel phones. It's much more of a departure from Samsung, if you're familiar with Samsung. And I really like that. It is a simple OS. It has the correct app drawer so that when you swipe up, oh, look at that, you just get a list of all your apps. It's just faster to get through all the apps. The other thing that Nothing does is really cool is make this monochromatic look to it. And I think that looks really slick. The weird thing though is when I got this phone that not all of the app icons were this great monochromatic design. Nothing actually has an app icon pack that you have to download and know about off the Play Store. There wasn't anything that prompted me in the OS to do that. Thought that was a little confusing. The other issue I ran into when originally setting this up is I thought, like, what if you had an iPhone and you wanted something that feels really fresh and different? Like, I got this weird bug where I would uncheck almost everything to transfer over from the iPhone, and it still showed that I had like 40 gigs it was going to transfer over and take like 2 hours. That was weird. I'm not sure if that's actually Nothing's fault or Google's. I think I've tried this once before migrating to an iPhone recently to a Pixel, and I ran into a similar bug there, but just be aware that if you see that and you do transfer to this phone from an iPhone, like, just set it up as new and download the apps you need from the Play Store, because I wouldn't want to deal with that if it actually does bring over 40 gigs of God knows what. I would like to see how long the battery is on the day-to-day, because every reviewer says different times. What about stabilization in video? And digital zoom is correct. Your videos are awesome, great quality. Thank you. So for battery life, again, I'm only a little over 6 days into this. The battery life, in my experience on this, has definitely lasted all day. It's very good. I probably would compare it of all the Android phones I have, it's somewhere like in between the Pixel 7 Pro and Samsung S23 Ultra. Like definitely lasts you all day. I think this camera has, I think this phone has like 4,700 milliamp hour battery in it. And you can just tell, it just kind of sips power. It it does a pretty good job. I've been pretty impressed with the battery life on this. Battery life on this, I would definitely rank above the iPhone 14 Pro. That is for sure. It probably could hang with the Pro Max. I don't have a Pro Max available with me, but I've been impressed so far with the battery life. I don't have numbers for you though yet, just because in the first week when you use a new phone, your day-to-day battery life is going to be inconsistent versus what it is over the long term. So that'll be something that we have on the 6 months later review that I'll definitely make sure to mention. Now, stabilization in video, yeah, the stabilization is like pretty decent. It's pretty fluid. Yeah, it's not bad. I think the stabilization, this will be something I'll test out more of the long term, but so far my impressions of videos on this with the stabilization it's pretty decent. The other thing that Nothing did a really good job with is the weight of this phone. This phone, as a large phone with a 6.7 inch diagonal display, only weighs like close to 200 grams. And at that weight, it's very similar actually to the Pixel 7 Pro, but way lighter than the 14 Pro Max. It is very comfortable to hold in your hand. Another thing I like that they did as well is they rounded off the glass on the back here. I just think that those rounded edges just make it a bit easier to hold than if they were completely flat. The other thing I really liked is they bundled in the case with a screen protector for a really great price, and the screen protector was very well designed, very easy to put in and apply as well. So I really like that they did that. And the screen protector is very good quality. It's tempered glass. That was another thing that a lot of people have had issues with, finding screen protectors that'll fit the right phone. I like that Nothing just out of the gate allows you to order a tempered glass screen protector. That's really cool. Some other subtle things that you may notice, the Taptic engine on here has a bit of a higher pitch than what you may be accustomed to on a Samsung phone like the S23 Ultra, which I'm reviewing, as well as a Pixel phone. Another cool thing about the Glyph interface, if you don't want these lights like shining in your eyes at night, it does have a bedtime mode that you can schedule so they do not turn on at a specific time. That's really good to see. It is the most iPhone feeling Android phone I think I've ever used, just with their design, with the aluminum side rails here. The camera looks very similar to an iPhone layout. I would argue this phone looks better than the iPhone. The build quality of this phone is absolutely solid. It looks like nothing else out there on the market. It just looks so slick and cool. I love picking up and using this phone because of that design. Now again, I'm only 6 days into the phone. The whole purpose of a 6 months later review is to see, am I going to be as hyped, as excited about it as I have been over the past week 6 months from now? If you want to find out, make sure you subscribe to the channel to see the full 6 months later review of this phone. If you like this video, you found it interesting, consider giving it a thumbs up. It really helps out the channel. And to see other updates as I'm reviewing this phone, make sure you follow me on Instagram and Threads, as well as subscribe to our monthly newsletter, which has things like review updates, deal alerts, hot takes, and everything we publish each month. And to see more content on Android devices like the Nothing Phone 2, you can get to those by clicking on the videos above. For 6 months later, I'm Josh Tedder. Thanks for watching.